Hey kids, and welcome to StoryTime. I'm so glad that you're here. I hope you've had a good week. Not every week is good. Some weeks can be difficult. So a special thought to those of you who might have had difficult weeks, but I hope you had some good times in there as well. What is really good is we get to hang out again, and I get to tell you another story. Now, about 4,368 years ago, and roughly about 1,600 years after this whole Bible story began, the world got really wet. I mean, you've been out in rain, right? You know what wet is like. Have you been somewhere where it's rained so much it started to flood? Like maybe in a low area you saw water gather up? I bet you've never seen the whole entire world flood, though. No, only a few people have ever seen that. So about 1,600 years after creation, don't hold me to that, it's a rough figure, but we've got some numbers in the Bible to work this sort of stuff out. 1,600 years ago. Do you know what was happening 1,600 years ago? That was a long time ago. So God had, creation had come, Adam and Eve had done their thing, Cain and Abel had done their thing, and well, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. In Genesis chapter 6, that's where we are today, well, and 7 and 8. Genesis chapter 6 says that God looked out over the world and he wished he hadn't made us. It must have got pretty bad for God to wish that. It must have been really hard on him to see all this wonderful creation go so terribly wrong. So he looks out to the whole world and he's like, this is really bad. But, we're going to use that word in the Bible a lot. The word but is really important in the Bible. But God saw Noah, and Noah, well, that made God happy inside. Because Noah was a good guy. Now, I don't know if you are a good person and you try and do good things. And if you are, do you find that not everybody treats you well for being good? Sometimes other kids have names for those who are good all the time. I've done some stuff in my life that I wish I hadn't done, but most of my life when I was a kid, I would have been considered one of those good kids that always did what the teacher said, never wanted to get into too much trouble. One of the things that I always used to do when we had meetings at church and the preacher would say, is there anybody here who wants to give their life to Jesus? And I'd be like, I want to give my life to Jesus. And so the preacher would be like, if you want to give your life to Jesus, raise your hand or come up to the front. We used to call those altar calls, and I used to go up to the front all the time. If the preacher who wants to give their lives to Jesus, I'm like, me. And I'd go up to the front, and I'd sit on the front pew, and the preacher would give me a little card to fill out, and that would pretty much be it until the next time the preacher wanted to get people to come up to the front. And I decided after a while that I'd probably come up to the front enough. I think Jesus now knew that I wanted to give my life to him. I think that news was out. So I decided at this particular end of the week of prayer at my school, when the preacher got up front and said, anybody who wants to give their lives to Jesus, come on down to the front. I was like, I've been there, I've done that. I think God knows. So I'm just gonna sit in my chair in my church and be like, I'm good with God. And then somebody in my school got up and went down to the front, and he I don't think had ever gone up to the front to officially give his life to Jesus. And so I looked at that and I thought, man, praise the Lord. That's awesome. That's really good. And then I noticed nobody else was going up. And I was like, it's kind of rough to be the only one who goes to the front. That's kind of difficult. So perhaps I'll just get up and go up there and help this person feel more comfortable, not so much alone. So I got up, and even though I was pretty sure Jesus knew that I was giving my life to him, I told him again in front of everybody else. And there was the two of us sitting at the front, and after the preacher had given us the card to fill out and told us that we could go on our way and the meeting was done, this person looked to me and said, Stephen, you always come up to these things. Why do you always come up to these things? You're just so... And I don't know what the word he was looking for, but it might have been along the lines of like, you just look good too much of the time. And it wasn't really a compliment. I'm guessing not everybody liked Noah. That maybe he was one of these people that like to do good things, but not everybody thought that that was a good idea. It doesn't always feel good to be good, which is a shame, really. I have a feeling that the snake in the tree has something to do with that. So God comes to Noah and says to Noah, I've got to do a restart. You know when your computer's not working and you just reboot it, you turn it off and turn it on again? God's like, I got to do that with the world because it's broken. But Noah, I really like you. And I think we can save people through you. So could you build a boat? Make it really big because I'm going to put a bunch of animals on there. And you and Mrs. Noah and your sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Mrs. Shem and Mrs. Ham and Mrs. Japheth, they should all get in the boat too. So Noah and his son started building a boat. And somebody near Kentucky built this boat that I'm going to put on the screen right now. I went to see it. That's the actual size of the boat. So I'm guessing Noah got a little bit of help because that is one huge boat. And then when it was all done, God says, you should go inside now and wait for 7 days. So Noah went into the boat and waited for 7 days. I don't know if he knew what was going to happen because it had never rained before. And I think this boat was quite a long way from some water. But God said do it. And Noah was the kind of guy that did the stuff that God says. So he built this big boat. That was a pretty major commitment. And then got Mrs. Noah and his kids and their Mrs. kids and got them into the boat. And an angel closed the door. And they just sort of sat and waited for the 7 days. And then they heard up. I think it's raining. And I was like, how do you know it's raining? You've never seen rain before. I was like, I know, but... They looked and felt and heard, and after a little while, that boat started going, whoa. I don't know if you've been in a storm, but storms can be kind of freaky. I've been in a car in a storm, and the windshield wipers go like really, really fast. I've been in a plane in a storm. I did a story time on that. That didn't feel very good. And I've been in a ferry boat in a storm, and I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. And I wonder who in Noah's family got seasick. They had 2 of every kind of animal in there, 7 of the clean animals, food clean, not like animals that had put on their deodorant that morning. And they looked after those animals in there for quite a long time because it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. That's like a month and a half. That's quite a long time. And then after 40 days, for another 110 days, it was still really, that's 150 days they were on the boat while it was just going around. And at the end of the 150 days, they just sort of, and they were on top of a mountain. And then 74 days after that, they kept, like wondering what was going on because they were pooping out the poop and they were feeding the animals and finally not feeling quite as seasick, trying to keep everything shipshape. And after 74 days, after the 150 days, they could see tops of other mountains. And the water was beginning to go down. 40 days after that, they sent a raven out. And then 7 days after that, they sent a dove out. And the dove came back, the raven came back, and 7 days after they sent the dove out again, but this time the dove didn't come back. And that was kind of their clue that the water was going down and maybe the storm was over. And then another 29 days after that, there's a lot of math here, a lot of math. And 29 days after that, they could see stuff. And then 56 days after that, they could go outside. That adds up to about 370 days, or 371, depending how you count days. That's just a little bit over a year they were on the ark. When they came out, they had a brand spanking new world. And it seems like the world was a little bit different. And so they planted some seeds again and set the animals out and had kids, and the world got a reboot because thankfully Noah was good. And Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord because Noah followed God. Sometimes there's lots of reasons that we think, I want to do my own thing. I want to try this. I want to do that. But if it's temptation that's coming, it never leads anywhere good. It just doesn't. It keeps getting worse and worse and worse. You know, sometimes when you lie, you have to lie to cover up the first lie. And then you have to lie to cover up the lie to cover up the first lie. Then you have to lie to cover up the lie to cover up the lie to cover up the first lie. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And God says, you can stop. And you can come and follow me. So I hope that it's not too difficult to be good, and that you kind of follow, that you follow God and you do what God says, because the Bible will show over and over again that things work out a little bit better when we follow God. And God says, I don't want to keep rebooting all the time, so you don't have to worry about that. So every time you see a rainbow, you'll be able to see that God promised us that we won't have another flood again. Of course, there are still other difficult things. And it doesn't always feel good to be good. But God's watching over, and he loves it when you, his creation, do the things that God is asking you to do. Oh, it makes him so happy. All right, that's this week's story. But I'll be back again next week. Until then, I hope it's a really good week for you guys. God bless you.